Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode here on the Womb Whispers podcast. Today, with my special guest, a good friend and a peer, and another beautiful coach, Piper Rose. Hi, Piper. Good to have you here.
Hi, it is so good to be here. This is a conversation that I think we've wanted to have for some time, and I'm very excited to see what comes out.
Yeah, me too. So, this conversation is going to be about menopause or navigating menopause as a non binary person, because that's definitely a topic that society at large doesn't talk much about, or possibly it doesn't even think much about. And we thought it could be a very valuable piece of information out there.
Yeah.
Um, so, Piper, before we start off, would you maybe like to introduce yourself a little, your work in the world, who you are, what you do, what you're fascinated
Sure.
about? Anything.
Yes. Yes. So, Piper Rose, my pronouns are they, them. I live in the United States between Seattle, Washington, and Denver, Colorado. I'm a neurosomatic relationship and intimacy coach, and that means that I work on supporting people to have really incredible secure, connective relationships from a place of a healed nervous system, a nervous system that has been able to let go of reactivity sourced from CPTSD, ADHD, attachment wounding. That's what I do. Uh, and it is also my passion. It's also what I'm very into. I love understanding how the brain works, how to truly transform our baseline by working top down with our stories and our beliefs and bottom up with our nervous system and the actual neuroplasticity that we have access to. I love art and seeing how people create in the world and express in the world. I will go almost anywhere for a vegan gluten free dessert because I can't have dairy or gluten. And then dancing, I think, is the last thing, like really joyful movement. I love to dance. That gets
Mhm.
me every time. I love that.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, so this topic, how it all came about, Piper and I are both taking a course by Flourish Institute as a female pelvic health specialist. And there was a module on menopause or perimenopause, and we had to ask each other some questions for our coaching practicum that we were doing. And there were questions like, what beliefs or what impression did your mother give you around menopause? How do you feel about menopause? How do you think society treats menopausal women? I think that was roughly the point where we uh, went into a different train of thoughts, and we were like, yeah, society only thinks about menopausal women, but what about the non binary folks? So that's how this all came about and started. And yeah, given all of that, let's dive into it. And
Yeah.
also what I found really interesting was that like where I was totally fascinated about menopause and had such a like for me it has always been this magical time and transition into the wisdom years, into the wise elder years. Uh, it was a different story for you when I asked you these questions. So maybe let's start there and what your impression of menopause was.
Oh, yeah. When you say what my impression of menopause was, I'm just going to say right now, I have ADHD. I don't know what I said. I don't when we talked, but I could tell you what I think about it right now in this moment. That's what I have access to. Um, yeah, I was thinking a lot about this in preparation for our time together and thinking about the wisdom that is possible um, by leaning into how non binary or trans folks experience their bodies and changes within their bodies. I think what's particularly beautiful and striking is that I will share about my experience while fully knowing and admitting that there are going to be many different experiences. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Many folks born and really aligning to their gender identity or their sex assigned at birth, they could go their whole life without a certain constriction, a tension, a rub that sparks a tremendous amount of self reflection and inquiry. And as queer folks, still in this world, there's a lot of feedback that what we do um, with love, or our choices in partnership and family, or our choices in community, our choices with our bodies are politicized in some way, judged in some way, and sometimes perceived of as not average. And the only reason that that's true is because there's a heteronormative paradigm that most of the world sort of runs on and accepts to be the baseline and that average. Now we know from research that that's not true. That normal and average, it doesn't actually exist. That it's this real beautiful cacophony with high points in different. Like if it was a chart, there'd be like clusters of different types of expression and experience, but they would be moving and overlapping and overlaying. And that's much more what's happening than just like this homogenous line that we sort of delusionally believe is some normal. And that being said, there are folks that receive enough comforting messaging, or messaging that allows them to be passive and not examine their body or their identity at certain levels, the way that they love, who they want to be, that they don't ever have to ask deeper questions, which is fine. There's no judgment there. And there is a rub for those of us who get mirrored back that our experiences are maybe not in social paradigms or understandings, that we don't see ourselves or have ourselves acknowledged in a deep way by our medical care professionals or different communities. And so menopause is really one of those, because so often it's like a women's domain.
Mhm.
As a non-binary person that doesn't necessarily feel super comfortable in those spaces or resonate with the identity centered experiences of menopausal women, I am naturally born with that rub, right? That friction,
Mhm.
that constriction that goes, what is this for me? And I am invited to examine that. What is menopause for me? What is my womb, my moon time, my plead, my arc of evolution? And I'm very aligned with you that it's the arc of evolution towards elderhood, that there is a profound transformation and shift that occurs. So that's where I'll start. And then I'm curious what sparked for you when I say some of those things.
Yeah, exactly that one thing, because what I see in a lot of menopausal women, and I say women specifically, is that when they come to perimenopause, suddenly they are asked to ask all these questions that you have to ask so much earlier. And that's like, again, not everyone, but that's where like that's an age where a lot of reflection happens. Do I want to continue living my life like that? Is that really the relationship I'm happy in?
Mhm.
Now my children are out of the house. What do I do with my life? Now it finally belongs to me again. Oh, I feel like I never had a life of my own. And it's this question
Yes.
of reclaiming one's power. Because the question of, okay, how do I want to go about this? What do I make of my womb? What do I make of my moontime? Those are questions that are powerful and that
Yeah.
help see their own and
Yes.
realize one's own power and have their yes and their no.
Yes. You 100% got it. So a lot of folks, queer folks, LGBTQ folks, trans folks, non binary folks, we have to ask those questions much earlier.
Yeah.
And I, for one, I do not see my sex organs or my reproductive system as inherently assigned to a gender. For me, that's a magical cosmic portal full of sensation and emotion and just like luxurious, delicious, pleasurable opportunity.
Mm.
And I relate to it as that. I don't see it as defining my gender or even my sex because I don't know what's going on in there. I could have one of the many dozens of variations of internal systems that we can't perceive from the outside. So I really tune into how I feel about it. Now, for me, my moon time is awesome. I had endometriosis for several years that made it really painful, but honestly, that was a sort of a profound spiritual experience, surrendering to that
Mhm.
degree of pain and surrendering to a body that isn't going to give me an alternative to an experience. I did learn a lot. That was a very deep and profound spiritual journey, very much an ordeal. Now, I did have surgery and my pain went down a lot in the times when I've had manageable pain. There is a different experience, one of deep respect and learning intimate relationship to cycles, seasons, the moon. I mean, the fact that I can bleed out of my yoni every month, I think it's very metal. It's very cool. I think it's so fucking cool. And I was taught from a very young age that this was a sacred part of the process that's happening in my body each month, aligning with the larger cycles,
Hmm.
that it is an opportunity to feel all that has happened, to reflect on the last 28-ish days, and to send out of my system anything that needs to be exited from my system. I was given that gift from my mother, from my mother's peers, and later from other teachers as I got older and into my 20s.
Hmm.
So I've had this really beautiful relationship to it, but a very conflicted relationship with being in women's spaces because I never really felt like a woman. I never connected with like goddess energy. That is so cosmic to me, and just potent, but it's not something that I assign to like goddesshood or womanhood. So for me, that's not true for every trans or non binary person. A lot of folks have complicated feelings about it. A lot of folks love it.
Mhm.
So approaching menopause for me is this next leg of the cosmic journey.
Mhm.
What will I transform into and become? I do have an intention as a member of a community that has a strong concept of chosen family.
Mhm.
I don't have children from my own body. So who do I become in community?
Mhm.
What spaciousness, what softening, what stability comes after this next ordeal or transformation? I don't know. I do know I'm leaning into elderhood. I'm leaning into welcoming whatever wisdom arises. Um, and I'm very, very excited
Mhm.
about it.
Mhm.
But for me, it's not associated with my life identities.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned, like motherhood and or your partnerships, like this is not led by that.
Mhm.
I think that also being a bit aware of concepts of patriarchy and the male gaze has also been super helpful, where I get to challenge, okay, what concerns, questions, judgments about menopause are left over from that, from what I see in
Mhm.
society as um, people who are assigned female at birth, like losing their value, losing their sexiness, losing their power. Like I see that. That is not lost on me. I don't get to be free from that just because I
Mhm.
question it. In fact, I will say questioning it gives me some liberation and spaciousness, but it is deep. It is deep in there and it will creep up on me all the time. I definitely struggle with what happens to me sexually. Like that's such a huge part of my identity. And later in life, I was able to be really comfortable in my body and my identity and enjoy sex, which wasn't always true. So I'm like, oh no, what happens? Do I lose that now? Like, do I lose that literal wetness, that
Mhm.
moistness, that
Yeah.
desire? There are certainly things I'm like, biting my nails a little bit, fretting about. But what I've learned from being transgender and especially having top surgery is that I will discover new ways of being
Mhm.
erotic and being
Mhm.
sensual and being sexual that I could not even dream up before these massive transmutative, transformative life experiences happen. So even though I still have the flitting, annoying, like mosquito like bites of patriarchal indoctrination into some terror that if I lose aspects of myself, I lose value.
Mhm.
I still have those, but I really get to lean into this lived experience that's like I undergo a massive transformation and things that I could never predicted become possible. So I would also like to lean into, much like I'm leaning into elderhood and not knowing who I get to be as an elder or what it means for my community, but being very curious. I'm also leaning into my sexual and sensual identity, my erotic power that might come in a new way with
Mhm.
this transformation in ways I can't possibly imagine.
Mhm.
And also, oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna grieve my monthly bleed so much. I just like again, it's just so tough. It's so metal. I love it. I'm like, God, I'm such a badass. I love it. But there's gonna be some other badassness that I'm sure I'll encounter.
Oh, yeah. I can see that in your future, or I sense that in your future. And eh, what I find very remarkable is that you do cherish your moon time so much, where, I mean, even many women struggle with that. So it's amazing that, at least in that regard, you have received a lot of wisdom and sacredness and reverence through your mom. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And you know what it reminds me of? There's this very fascinating study that there are trans men whose organ systems are still intact and they become parents. They have a baby grow in their body and they give birth to this baby. And what happens? They studied C-sections and vaginal births,
Hmm.
and those with C-sections had increased dysphoria. Their body felt just like foreign, not really setting right. Vaginal births. In my mind, I thought, "Oh my god, that's gonna amplify their dysphoria."
Hmm.
No. The
Hmm.
vaginal birth led to decreases in dysphoria and more euphoric experiences in their body. Now, what is the theory here? Uh, a lot of the reported experiences were like, "That was so powerful. I was so powerful in my body.
Hmm.
I fucking grew a baby. I
Hmm.
gave birth to a baby. This thing is badass." And I sort of feel similar. Like part of what has decreased my dysphoria for myself only, speaking only for myself, is getting in touch with how badass and powerful my moon cycle is for me. I can relate to it. I can find power in it. That is an intimate relationship, cannot be judged or compared to anyone else. But I do think that coming into that decreases my dysphoria. And I wonder if as I age and as menopause comes into my womb and changes my energy and my cycles, if I will find a different type of comfort in my own skin, that I'll be increasingly on the path of being comfortable rather than uncomfortable. And again, I think it's that root of questioning identity very young and
Hmm.
being forced to be curious, being forced to know that you don't know.
Yeah. And isn't that like what most people are most afraid of? This fear of the unknown? I mean, logically, it makes sense that our brain is afraid of anything that is unknown. And it's about becoming more and more comfortable with sitting in this unknown, which is a process all on its own. But what I found remarkable when you explained how you're approaching this whole transition is that, like, you have had to learn this curiosity from a very young age. So you approach the transition with the same curiosity that many people haven't learned at that stage, because in our society everything is just so defined and we're put into a box and this is your place and please don't get out of there because
Yeah.
we don't want you to disrupt the system that is actually harming you, but we
Yeah.
gain from it. So basically the perspective. And having like, because what you described was that's how change works. Change is always a little uncomfortable. There will very possibly be a discomfort, and also there is possibility on the other side. It's not, oh, I lose all of this. You might, and also you don't know if that what you gain from the other side isn't even better. And I feel like you have had these moments in your life, so many more of those where you had to where you did find that, oh, on the other side of the change it's even better. So I
Yeah.
don't mind losing parts of me. We are dying on a monthly basis anyway. Part of us is dying and something else is reborn.
Yes. Yeah. And I would also say the other wisdom, like the other gem in my personal trans non-binary experience is the agency.
Yeah.
I I am responsible for my identity. I am responsible for my authenticity. I am responsible for that
Yeah.
because my signals might be much higher. My threshold might be much tighter actually, that I notice more quickly if something feels inauthentic
Mm-hmm.
by being in this tension with a larger, like, sort of heteronormative world. I Yeah, like, I'm the one that gets to choose this. I get to choose what I wear that feels good. I get to choose,
Mm-hmm.
like, how I present in the world, what types of relationships that I have, what I do to my body that is going to feel really good. Like, I get to choose that, and I'm the only one that's gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because society's not gonna give me the script. I gotta sit down and I have to write it out. So that's the other thing, is menopause is gonna happen. And yes, I have these flitting mosquitoes of patriarchy that incite fear, but I know I'm the one that writes the script, as I have always done.
Yeah.
And there's something very empowering about that.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, there might also be a sad sort of cool thing in here that is I'm very used to society looking at me and being like, "You're not valid. That's not a real thing." I'm like, "I'm pretty sure I'm me every day and I'm pretty real." But the this like fear to be seen differently that so many women, I'm guessing, do face about their vitality and their worth and their value and contribution. I already, it's sad but true, have to learn to rebuke that in
Mm-hmm.
order to survive with for my own heart and mental health and spirit. I do have to learn to say, I don't really care how you see me because I know who I am. And
And
at
you
the
know who
end
you
of the
want to
day,
be.
yes, and I know who I want to be. And that's governed by values, not some identity.
Yeah.
My identity shifts and I welcome that. I've experienced that. I can imagine your identity not shifting for a, your whole life. How terrifying to do anything. It would feel so fragile, I think. But yeah, it's different. And I'm used to having to say, I don't I don't care what you think. Um, you don't get to decide how I feel or
Mm-hmm.
experience this reality. And I'm sorry that you want to push me away rather than be intimate and connective. And that's, you kind of
And
put
maybe
a little bit of
just
a tough
be
skin.
open to making a new experience and getting
Oh
to
yeah.
know another human being and like widening your horizon.
Yeah. Yeah, for some people that's not safe. And this honestly goes back to the nervous system work I do, which
Yeah.
is if the nervous system doesn't feel safe, which for most of us it doesn't a lot. There's a lot going on in the world. We have a lot of stimulation. We've had a lot of attachment wounding. This body, this physiological body is giving us signals that we have to fight or flee or fawn or fall asleep. Like our body is giving us these signals and our brain is struggling to make sense of them and build a story off of them so that we have some coherence.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot that I personally get to have access to that comes from healing my nervous system, which means, sure, these mosquitoes of patriarchy are bothering me, but those fears don't get to take root. They actually don't get to kick off a fight or flight
Mhm.
uh, response. They don't get to create cycles of reactivity or terror in which I constantly am abandoning my authentic self so that I can survive. Like, I don't have to do that anymore. And so I really want to name that my experience might feel particularly different to anyone who's sitting out there and in a lot of reactivity, feeling a lot of defensiveness, feeling a lot of judgment,
Mhm.
feeling a lot of fear, feeling a lot of perfectionism. Those are all signs that your nervous system has got a hold of you.
Mhm.
And also, I'm 41 years old, like I'm headed into perimenopause and I've lived up for a minute. So, any younger folks that are listening to this, like this takes time,
Mhm.
cultivation, curiosity, really leaning in, building a type of fortitude, a type of strength, welcoming the pain, the grief that comes with embracing who you really are.
Yeah.
And most of us spend our life embracing the pain of struggling to truly connect, struggling to
Struggling
truly
to
belong.
try to be somebody else that is more
Yep.
acceptable socially.
Yeah. We have an incredible primal drive in this nervous system to attach to others, to be safe through connection. We need it. We need connection. I understand it completely.
Yeah.
And for better or worse, trans and non binary folks often have to sacrifice connection up top in the beginning of their journeys
Yeah.
in order to pursue their authentic self.
And also, I believe, but that's of course just my outside view, is that in that lies the chance of those people that you are actually connecting with being like true connections, heartfelt connections, deep connections, right?
Yes, this is
Quality over
it. I mean, this is it.
quantity.
I tell people this all the time. You only need like five really tight people in your life. And the best advice I give young people and really anyone is the more you know what you value, you align with those values, you work to align with those values, and you bring that into the world as yourself, as fully as you can be, as vulnerably as you can be, you will not question when someone says to you, I love you. You'll know it, you'll
Mm.
feel it.
And when you were speaking about identity and the shifting and the changing, I reflected for myself because, well, I am a woman, I'm cisgendered, I've been born a woman, I feel as a woman, and still I hold many different identities because identity isn't just about who I love or the sex organs I have. It's also about what kind of humor I have. It's what kind of movies I like, what kind of music and dance I like. And even in my business, I realize like I'm evolving, I'm learning new things, I'm becoming interested in different aspects of the bigger topic that I'm working with, or even a whole different topic altogether at times. And there must be space for this exploration because that's what life is. Life is constantly reproducing. and evolving. It's not doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's creating difference, variations, and that's what gives more flavors to life, and that's what makes life more interesting, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, not a lot of folks are super comfortable with that because that's part of the mystery.
Yeah.
If I explore my sense of humor in this way, if I dress this different way, if I pick up this different hobby, like what are the consequences
Mhm.
for the stability that that I've experienced in my life? I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to like changing your career and how scary that
Mhm.
is. Why? Because there's so much identity wrapped up in it, but at the same time, at a superficial level, if we just say, I'm going to change jobs, it seems very easy, but it's very challenging to our identities.
Mhm.
And I love moments like that because it gives every individual, like where there is change, there is choice.
Mhm.
We get to transform. That is literally what we're doing. And I love what you're saying, leaning into it and being able to taste like all the different flavors of Lisa that are going to pop up on the buffet of life. Like, I love that.
Yeah. And that's like, yeah, the mystery is something our brains don't understand for sure. That, of course, leads to nervous system activation. And I just want to say again, like, you don't know that's why it's a mystery. You don't know what's on the other side. And usually the universe, if you believe in that, if you believe in God or goddess or the divine or source or angels, your flavor is your flavor. But they usually present us with something far better than we have expected, even when we are open to receiving and don't have a like a fixed thought about this is what it needs to look like, or else it's a failure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if we were to even like sort of go through everything that we've talked about and break it down into like practical, actionable tools, one, understand what your beliefs are. What beliefs as deeply unconscious as you can get. Like get into like just what you notice, whether or not you believe it's true, anything top of mind as deep as you can get. Just laying all the beliefs out and then saying which of these align with the values that I hold and who I really want to be going forward, which ones need to be changed, which ones need to be challenged, which ones need to be thrown out, and that's like a very practical tool for anyone going into perimenopause and menopause. Just
Yeah.
right now, just do that. That's like a very practical thing. Write it out, 30 minutes of your time, and you'll see that just by identifying the beliefs you hold, taking the time to examine it, doing that self inquiry, it's going to change the way that you enter into this beautiful, magical transformation.
Yeah, and there is one more thing that I just now remembered that I wanted to say is like in this change, and when I say like I'm exploring different identities and shifting all the time, is that but my values they stay the same. Like my core
Yes.
values, that's what makes me me. And whether I get to
Yes.
express that in a job working for someone else, or whether I do that in my business, or whether I do that with my family or with my friends, doesn't matter because it's my values and no one can take that away from me.
Yep. And making space here for everyone, I do want to say there are ways for all of us to coexist, even if we don't understand each other, even if we don't believe that what the other person is doing is quote unquote right. When we
Mhm.
give respect and space and we realize we don't actually have to be in community with everyone directly. That's the
Mhm.
beauty of our tight circle of five. And I just want to name that women are powerful and they relate to their bodies and their identities, their goddesshood, whatever language you use. It's so beautiful. And if you're a man going through perimenopause, a non binary person going through menopause, however you can relate in a loving, values driven way with your experience, or even a neutral way with your experience, a neutral fortitude building way, like, fuck yes. Whatever that is, yes to that.
Mhm.
Yes, you can't do it wrong. just leaning in with compassion, leaning in with generosity. You can't do it wrong. Whatever your identity is, if you're leaning in with those values and that curiosity, that generosity, and that compassion, then this is an opportunity to grow into something that, to your point, you couldn't possibly imagine before and is probably going
Mhm.
to be beyond your wildest dreams.
Mhm.
So it's just I really want to encourage any identity wherever you are, like lean in, love it, celebrate it, enjoy it.
Yes, please. And maybe the second or tied into your practical example is like getting clear on what do you actually value in life? What do you value in yourself? And according to that, look at your beliefs and which beliefs align with that. And
Yeah.
again, which have to be changed or which have to be let go of. And of course, there are, because change, especially deep change like that, is scary. That's why there are people like Piper and myself who support others
Yeah.
through their time of change. Not because we believe that we know the answers, so you know, but because we have a tight riverbed through which you can find your own answers and what's right and true for you uniquely. Because, as you say, it's different for every person, for every human being.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. This is really why I did become a therapist, is because even like the diagnostic statistics manual and things, it's like don't tell me what the person's experience needs to be.
yeah.
You know, I'm not going to tell them how to get somewhere that's some list of signs and symptoms that are somehow appropriate. Like we are much more complex and beautiful than that. And I want everyone to be telling me where they want to go. And I'm like, well, let me help you get
Yes.
there. That's what I'm interested in. So, same with the menopause journey. Where do you want to be? And what are you willing to let go of
Mhm.
to welcome it? Also, want to say, again, going back to that nervous system stuff, a lot of that can be met doing inner child work and inner teen work, like really building those inner relationships. And in my experience, if I address the fears with compassion and I commit that even though I'm leaning into healthy elderhood and I'm leaning into a kind of erotic postmenopausal power and I'm leaning into a new mystery, if it doesn't feel comfortable or sometimes it doesn't feel good, I commit to being willing to sit with the discomfort and let it continue to teach me how to grow,
Mhm.
you know? So I think that that's another important thing that I use as a psychological safety net. If I don't, I do get afraid that I'm putting sort of demands that it will look or feel a certain way, good and easy, and I have to give myself another layer to really say yes to being curious, which is, you know what, no matter what happens, I know I have my back. I know I'll hold myself in those fears with compassion. And whatever is uncomfortable or hard, I know I can really show up for that for myself and to ask all those people who love me because I am very authentic with them and I know that they love me. I can ask them for help. So that is also really important for me moving into the times of great mystery.
Mhm. Amazing. Thank you, Piper.
Thank
If
you.
folks would like to work with you or just connect or ask something or start a conversation on anything that you've shared that
Yeah.
we've shared, where can they find you? What's your
Yeah.
preferred way of being contacted?
Well, there's two ways. There's Instagram where you can find me at Shadow Play Coaching. It's all one word. Or you can go to my website, which is piperrosecoaching.com, and you'll see Shadow Play Coaching, and you're welcome to set up a discovery call or send a message. And I would love to hear other people's thoughts and experiences. Yeah. Thank you so much for this time today,
Amazing.
Lisa.
I will definitely put everything into the show notes. And yeah, folks, please do reach out. We value a good conversation, an open and curious exploration of
Mhm.
what anything that we've shared has brought up for you, what resonates with you, maybe what you strongly disagree with. Always open for these conversations as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Piper, for being here and having the
Thank you,
conversation.
Lisa. Thank you,
See you
everyone.
next time.
See
Bye.
you next time. Bye.